Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today, I want to talk about a book that I read, one that is in a series that I've been wanting to check out and see more of, and one where the first book in the series was probably one of the best books that I've read, not only for this channel but also in terms of my reading journey. This book is about priestesses and magic. I am referring to The Tombs of Atuan by Ursula K. Le Guin, part of the Earthsea series, and this was published around 1971. For those who don't know, Ursula K. Le Guin is a highly regarded American author. I've talked about her on this channel before, so I don't need to go into too much more detail. Just noting that she's written a number of books, including the Earthsea series. She's also written short stories like The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas and The Wife's Story, which I've talked about on this channel. Go check out those videos in my Short Story Tuesday section. She's written a number of other things as well. Pretty great author. I haven't been led astray by her yet. This book has a number of issues, but it also has some of the classic Le Guin writing, which I think really helps save it from the dustbin of book trash or something like that. But not to say it's bad or anything, just that, maybe I was expecting a bit more. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But without further ado, let's go straight back into the story. I will do a summary, a little bit of an analysis, and we will move on from there. So the Tombs of Atuan, I'm gonna mispronounce it at multiple points. I seem to be mispronouncing a lot of things with this series as I look back on the video that I made for Wizard of Earthsea, and I realized I called Jed Ged, which I was just pronouncing his name phonetically, which is a whole problem. But yeah, I'm going to be mispronouncing quite a few names because I haven't really heard anyone say these names. But yeah, the Tombs of Atuan focuses on a character named Tenar. She was taken from her family when she was a young child, and she was taken by a sort of religious cult, religion, a group of people who believed that she was the rebirth of Arha, or the Eaten One, essentially the person who's supposed to guard over the tombs of Atuan and make sure that that sacrifices are done and that no thieves enter the tombs and steal things, and if they do, that they're punished. So she becomes Arha, kind of living secluded and isolated in this region of Earthsea, without too many people around her. And those who are around her are her servants, her slaves, as well as a person named Castle, who doesn't seem too happy that she has to that she has to be in service of such a young woman when she knows when she has a much stronger role for the God King of Earthsea. Tenar Aha is tasked with basically navigating the labyrinth underneath the tombs, sort of how it winds and everything, navigating her way in and out of there without issue. She encounters some thieves and she has to sentence them to death, which she does by sentencing them to starvation in the tombs, and later they are buried, an act that causes her immense guilt throughout the rest of the story. She also hears stories of wizards, even though where she's from, the region of Earthsea where she's from, they don't have magic and they don't trust wizards at all. She also hears the story about an amulet of Aerith Abe or something like that, where they want. Like the wizards want the amulet, and the amulet has supposedly high power, and it might be buried in the tombs. But Tenar is tasked with making sure no one is able to get it. However, as the story progresses, Tenar stumbles upon an intruder in the tombs who is revealed to be a wizard, basically navigating with the light from their staff. They seem to be getting lost, but they aren't too worried about anything. And finally, Tenar manages to capture this wizard and hold him prisoner for a time. The wizard reveals himself to be Jed from the first book, and he is in the tomb to acquire this amulet, which is supposedly going to bring peace and help bring wisdom to the rulers of Earthsea, because they seem to be a tyrannical bunch or a dark bunch. And this amulet is supposedly, like, the history behind it is that the runes will bring peace to the rulers, which is pretty wonderful. But Jed's very existence calls Tenar's faith into question. She wonders why the gods, who are supposedly underneath the tombs, why they haven't punished Jed yet. And Tenar really doesn't have an answer. And it calls her faith into question, and a lot of issues arise for her. She's supposedly supposed to kill Jed or sentence him to death for his presence in the tombs. And instead, she tells Castle and others that she sentenced Jed to death and will do whatever she wants to him. But instead, she decides to free him, and they agree to leave the tombs of Atuan and this general area for the other half of the world, in the process navigating the labyrinth and killing one of her manservants who was trying to kill Jed in the process. And Jed just notes that he feels a dark presence in this tomb, suggesting that the gods are there, but in another form, that maybe they can't touch Tenar because of her faith that is still with her. They manage to escape the tomb and make their way far away from the tombs of Atuan. As they're leaving, Tenar expresses guilt over what she's done, and Jed tries to assuage her worries and fears by noting that there was a dark presence that had latched onto her while she was at the tombs. Like, yeah, it is bad that she sentenced those people to death, but she can atone for her mistakes, down the road. Like, she can make up for it, and she doesn't have to be just the person who was supposedly kidnapped and forced to become, not really kidnapped, but taken away and forced to become this high priestess for this temple that she never really wanted to be a part of. I don't know if that really assuages her guilt. Perhaps we might see more of that in later books, about her really exploring those kinds of feelings. But Jed also tells Tenar about Havnor and how she will be well regarded when she gets there. And he notes that, like, he can't really stay with her once they get there because he has other responsibilities as a sorcerer. Like, he has other duties. He has to go about Earthsea and helping the people who need help. But he also tells her about Ogion, who we recall from the first book, and how he provided guidance for Jed when he needed it, and how he might be able to provide that guidance for Tenar as well. And the story really ends with them entering Havnor, presumably going to Ogion, and hopefully great things will happen for Tenar as she progresses through her life. In terms of analysis, Guin provides us with a little bit to think about here. Certainly not as much as a Wizard of Earthsea. There was quite a bit of substance there, and here there feels like less of it, although there is some stuff worth talking about. One of those ideas is the idea of faith, or unquestioning worship, as I call it in this story. So Tenar is supposedly a high priestess. She's a person of immense power, reborn in the body through the ages. This has happened for quite some time. Not really specific on how long this has been happening, but it's an ancient order, and Tenar has to fulfill this role because she was chosen for it. And it seems like she does commit to this role, sort of believing that she is this high priestess, and doing the duties as described to her. She doesn't really try to escape or anything like that. She just seems to be invested in this role and so much so that it puts her at odds with other people. We see her invested in the role when she sentenced the thieves to death. Like, if she didn't really believe that she was this high priestess, or even had the power, or even wanted to do it, she wouldn't have sentenced those thieves to death. It's true that, like, she did it, but also it can also be true that she was kind of forced to do it by these people who indoctrinated her, or programmed her to believe that this is what she had to do as a high priestess. And you also see this in her encounter with Ged. First, she's very incredulous about why he's doing what he's doing, why he's navigating the tomb, and she's like, "You're in defiance of the dark gods down here, of the nameless ones. Something bad will happen to you. It always happens to you." And Jed tries to assure her that nothing really bad is going to happen to him. That maybe her view of the world is wrong or misguided. And no matter what he tries to say to her, though, her faith prevents her from really accepting it initially. Allow me to read you an interesting quote from this. "It doesn't matter if there's ocean and dragons and white towers and all that, because you'll never see them again. You'll never even see the light of the sun. All I know is the dark, the night underground, and that's all there really is. That's all there is to know in the end, the silence and the dark. You know everything, wizard, but I know one thing, the one true thing." And I really like that quote because it gets at Tenar kind of not really accepting what Jed is telling her. Her saying you're telling me about all these wizards and dragons and all of this stuff of the outside world. I don't believe it because it goes against what my faith has taught me. It's impossible or very difficult for her to accept it at first, because in order for her to accept that what Jed is saying is true, that any part of what he's saying is true, that he even might be a good person, it requires her to re-examine her own faith. And she's been so enmeshed in it for quite some time that's really hard for her to do. Either her entire life has been a lie, or that those who have been raising her for quite some time have been lying to her. Like, it only stands to show her how lonely she's been. It only stands to remind her that she's not happy in as this high priestess, that this life wasn't chosen for her. And so if it's all been a lie, then she's been living these past 10 years, doing things that she'd rather not want to do. Really sad right there. And so this gets at how it's hard to break programming that we've been taught for all our lives, that even if our faith is cruel and what we're being asked to do is harsh or even goes against our own morality, like maybe if you've been programmed to do something like this, like Tenar has, like you're not really going to change how you do things. Even in the face of evidence to the contrary, like Jed, Tenar just goes ahead and says, "I know the one true thing. Like, only this is the case." And while she may in fact actually believe that, some of the things that happen in the story suggest that there's doubts underneath the surface. Like when she goes against some of the things that this religion wants her to do, she says, "Oh, I challenge them to punish me for my actions. They wouldn't dare punish me." And I think it's because she realizes that in this sort of cult that she's in, that they're not really going to try to punish her because she has such immense power. But also, how can she go against what this cult wants for her? Unless she doesn't actually believe what's going on. She cries at that point, which I find very interesting. And you see at other points in the story where she wants to believe what's happening, but it just seems like there's more there that she doesn't know, and she understands that she doesn't know it, and it leads her to a lot of questions. And so she wants to be this good soldier, this good high priestess, and continue this long line of high priestesses. But there's just something underneath the surface, and it's something that Jed only brings to the surface. Like, his presence only reminds her that something's not quite right about the situation that she's been placed into. So I think that's really fascinating there. It's also worth talking about Jed in this story. He's kind of a side character, whereas in the first story he was the main character. We focused entirely on him, and this is Jed years later. I don't know how many years have passed since the events of A Wizard of Earthsea, but it's clearly been some time because Jed has been changed by his experiences. He's no longer the young boy that we saw at the beginning of A Wizard of Earthsea, and he might not even be the boy that we saw at the end of the story. Like, some time has passed. He still has scars on his face from his encounters with the shadow. He also seems a little bit sadder. Like his experiences, not only in the Wizard of Earthsea, but also maybe what happened afterwards. Like, he's seen more of the world and he's become sadder for that experience. Like he's lived a life of begging. He's lived a life where he's seen death and grief, and he's seen some good things, but he's seen some unfortunate things as well. And I feel like in this story, he's a bit sad, which is unfortunate. But like I do like seeing that development of Jed's character. He's not the person we saw in the first book. There's been some progression, and I feel like that's great because in a lot of sequels, you have a tendency to regress or to keep characters exactly the same as they've always been. And I like how Guin is willing to change Jed and show that he's maturing, he's growing. We see that he's filled with kindness as well as, because he doesn't have to help Tenar, but he wants to. Like, he doesn't have to help most of the people that he comes across, but he sees like it as kindness as a little bit necessary to help them with his magic whenever he can. He's changed with his sorcery experience, whereas in the beginning of A Wizard of Earthsea, he was willing to use it all willy-nilly. Now he's very careful in how he uses it. He says he uses it for small things as well as large things, but he realizes that not every answer can be solved with magic. I think because of what happened with the shadow creature at the end of A Wizard of Earthsea, he realized maybe sometimes the answer is kindness, especially toward yourself. And through this story, we see Jed really torn by duty as well as his desire to help Tenar. Kind of torn between finding the amulet that he's looking for and also going about the world and helping people with his sorcery, but also helping Tenar. Because he tells Tenar, like, I can't be with you there forever. Like, I'll take you to Halfnor, I'll stay with you as long as I can, but I eventually have to make my way into the world again and help people wherever I'm called in Earthsea. And that's really sad for Tenar because I think she needs a helping hand, a guiding force to really help her as she navigates the world after breaking away from this cult, this religion that's held her prisoner for so long. And it's going to be hard for Tenar, but maybe as Jed realized, like, he didn't really have an answer or someone to guide him. He had to figure out a lot of his problems on his own, and that's the case for Tenar. He does recommend that she seek out Ogian, but as we know, like, Ogian's not going to give her all the answers too. This is a journey that she must go on by herself. Like, it's great to have support and emotional assistance, but Tenar is really going to need to find a path for her, blaze a trail on her own. And so it's interesting to see Jed's character development and also how he might be similar to Tenar years ago. Like, Tenar might be in the same path that he was once on. And I think he does recognize it because he kind of winces in pain as she's talking about certain things. And he might be remembering some of the missteps that he took in his development. I do think this story is kind of rushed. It feels like Guin is in a hurry to get to the end, especially not really focusing enough on Tenar, like her backstory. I also feel like this story could have been a little bit different in that this could have been a story about Jed, and then he meets Tenar, and we learn about her backstory there, and then that is used as they head towards whatever goal they're going on. Largely, this story feels like a prequel for some reason for Tenar's own story. And later, I did read that there is more focus on Tenar in later stories. And again, like, I feel like this is a prequel that maybe shouldn't be a prequel. It feels kind of slow, and there's not enough focus on Jed. And I do like Tenar as a character, but because the story is rushed, I feel like we don't learn maybe too much else about Tenar. And then the story just kind of abruptly ends. Tenar gets free, and then I feel like it could have continued for a little bit longer, maybe focusing on some more main elements of the story. And I feel like that would have really sunk the story, except for the emotional ending. Le Guin is really good at writing endings, I think. Really good at writing in general, but she fuses emotion into the ending, where we learn a little more about Tenar's guilt that she feels, and her kind of wondering what's next for her, especially given that she doesn't seem completely free of this cult that she was once a part of. I really think it's fascinating how Tenar, like as Jed is meditating, takes out her sacrificial knife and considers either killing herself or killing Jed, because she hasn't been completely freed from this cult. And Jed realizes that, and he's like, you don't have to be what this island made you, or this remote area made you. You can be more than that. And it really felt really powerful to me. Like really, a really strong ending, and an otherwise kind of middling book. There's less substance to this than the first book, but maybe I was looking for something that was on par with the journey that Jed went through, and this doesn't really feel the same. It feels like along the similar lines, but it's just not enough to be as powerful, in my opinion. I realize I might be contradictory here, but unfortunately, that's kind of the nature of my reviews sometimes. Just a big mess of contradictions. Anyway, those are my thoughts on The Tombs of Atuan. I thought it was a fine book, even if it wasn't if it wasn't of similar quality to the first book. I do think I'm going to explore more of the series. I had briefly considered just stopping entirely, but I kind of want to hear more about Tenar. I want to see more about her journey. I want to see more of Jed's journey. I feel like there's a lot to be gained from this series, and a lot of quality writing on Le Guin's part. Like, even when she turns out a less than stellar experience, like, her writing is such that it merits attention and it merits study. So definitely can't wait to read more. And I somewhat do recommend this to you out there. If you read this before, you simply want to comment on something I said here, do so below. Let's have a discussion about Le Guin. And this book, if you read it already. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And until we meet again, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and religious travels. Farewell.